data democracy is very like organization maturation specific because it's size specific to an organization. There's a tool that might be great for organization A that's absolutely horrible for organization B because of the maturity differences.
My name's Adam Collins. I'm the Director of Marketing here at AdMind Analytics. I'm here with our founder, Mike Query. Mike, how you doing?
Pretty good, Adam. What's up?
Good. So today we're going to talk about something that's a little bit more ethereal. It's data democracy. There's not necessarily a yes or no to that kind of thing. It's a little bit more culture-based around you and your company. In the context of marketing analytics, what does data democracy mean?
So I think if you had to do it in a sentence, it's the right people having the right data to facilitate their decision making.
So why should I be thinking about data democracy if I'm looking at improving my marketing analytics?
So the best organized set of data that's not in the hands of the people who need it is worth nothing. So it's about the human to data interface, the decision maker to data interface is key, and data democracy is a piece of that. So you have to design not only the technical data collection and organization and standardization, but you also have to think about the delivery for the decision makers.
So tell me a little bit more about the different decision makers and what their role with the democracy, what their role with the data would be.
I think as a marketing team, oftentimes you're thinking about it like you've got members underneath you on a marketing team that need the information that they need to make their decisions, and it needs to be aligned with the whole marketing team. So if somebody's, if you have somebody who's working on paid social and somebody who's working on paid search, we know that if they're operating in Google ads and Facebook ads in total isolation and don't have an awareness of one another, that those two attribution models won't line up exactly, that they're going to be sharing credit and things. So one of the things is making sure that the people underneath you have the data that they need to make decisions and that it's aligned with your organization, with your marketing efforts across team members.
It's one thing, even in the example that you give there, is those people at least both work on the paid acquisition side.
Oh, sure.
If you have a digital manager and a sales data manager who are in a similar needing to have similar overlap and agreement, but who don't, then the problem gets worse.
And that's kind of the align up sort of thing. That if you have marketing and sales and those departments are separate, if you have marketing and IT and somebody says to IT, how many form fills did we get? And somebody asks marketing, how many form fills did we get? How many contacts did we get created in the CRM? And it's those are kind of supposed to be the same question. But if you go look at the web database and say how many form fills we got versus how many actual contacts we got in the CRM, those numbers are going to be different. So if you report those numbers up to stakeholders, to common stakeholders, and they don't line up, then that's another issue of data democracy, because you have stakeholders that don't know how to make decisions, that are empowered by the data to make decisions because you have misalignments. Okay,
so why is data democracy so hard to execute?
So I think that one of the things that's funny about this is that the word, it maybe even is a little misleading, because what you want is not a data buffet where you say, here's raw data, whole organization, everybody just come and sneeze in the food and grab it whenever you want, right? What you want is an organized hierarchical structure. It looks more like, if you go back to your elementary school days, like a republic where you have the right data organized for the right people and in alignment across the board. So it's not a free for all. That's one of the things that's really hard, is it's not just give everybody all data.
And I think it's important to note that there's not a tool that will ever do this for you. There is no such tool as datademocracytool.org. It's an approach to the data and how you manage it internally, and then using the tools to make sure that you are getting the right data to the right people so they can make decisions that are important to their responsibilities. But that takes leadership. It takes somebody being at the helm of that.
Absolutely.
And kind of taking in what those different departments' primary KPIs are, and then ensuring that we have access to that it's been cleaned, organized, that there's agreement around those. It's a practice. It's not necessarily a product.
Think about a concrete there. So imagine if you're doing, we'll use two examples. Imagine you're doing lead generation. The idea, and say you're using Salesforce, so you have a contact and a lead object or something. You could pick another system, you might have different names, but you could say, how you could see that somebody might ask the question, how many form fills did we get on the site? And we used this example just a minute ago, but how many leads did we get is actually a different question, because one person can fill out multiple forms and be created as a single record in the CRM, but generate multiple form fills. And so the point is, what you're saying is dead on, that you have to have alignment around definitions so that you can ask, so that you as an organization, you're trained to ask the questions in a coherent way, so that your answers come back from whichever system it is that you happen to be looking at in a coherent way.
And I think you get the different departments that have their core KPIs and the data that they're accustomed to looking at in the platforms they're accustomed to using, kind of, I'm going to use a cynical approach here to say, like, they then go to bat for like how
Sure.
their data is accurate, not necessarily with the intention of being confrontational, but it's just the data that they're used to seeing. So like they think that that's the most accurate one.
Yeah.
And then you end up getting these sort of disagreements between different departments around what these things actually mean.
And what that says is, like you said, there's a discipline and a leadership gap there. There's a vacuum when that sort of thing happens. And the reason that happens is because it's hard. People will default to the system that they perform their day-to-day activities in to pull their data from. And if they don't have a way to rationalize that against somebody else's system, then conflict.
Right. Okay. So what are some times that we've seen it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? And what are the consequences to the business when it goes off the rails like that?
So one of the things that's hard about this is data democracy is very like organization maturation specific. Amazon's data democracy doesn't match Admine's data democracy. The way we share data is not the same way that Amazon shares data. And so one of the times that I can think of that this is done wrong is that because it's t-shirt size specific, because it's size specific to an organization, there's a tool that might be great for organization A that's absolutely horrible for organization B because of the maturity differences. And one of the times that comes to mind that I think of is we were working with a company that had a small, they would even have said they didn't have a marketing team. They were, a couple hundred employees, product-led business, but marketing was kind of product and product was kind of marketing, and they were starting to build marketing efforts for the first time. And so they didn't really have any analysts. So in a marketing practice, you think about the people who are looking at the data, and you've got stakeholders and you've got analysts, and you've got people who are facilitating a mature practice, people who are facilitating data engineering the data, preparing it for review. And these guys they were using Looker, and Looker's a great tool for the right size business. But the idea behind the Looker tool is if you have a team of analysts, you're trying to create the analyst buffet where analysts can come in and look at the data that's been standardized and organized already. But you don't build an analyst buffet if you don't have a team of analysts. If you have a team of stakeholders or a couple stakeholders, analyst buffet is like, what do we do with this? Like, you're asking me here to come and prepare my own meal. This is awful. And so the reason it was awful was wrong tool, expensive tool in that scenario, and zero data in the hands of the people who needed it.
Interesting. Yeah, you can see how then the tool didn't align, the questions didn't align, and so from there it just breaks down.
Yeah.
And in that scenario, those people went into it with the best of intentions.
Sure. And the thing that's interesting is like the Looker sales team doesn't go, hey, this tool is probably not the right tool for you guys.
We don't know that. We're going to assume. Just kidding, Looker. Just kidding, guys.
But that's the idea, is you're not going to get everybody you talk to from a sales perspective say, well, obviously we solve all your problems.
Right.
Like, well,
right.
But as good as something else? Well, I don't know. Well, obviously we solve your problems.
Right. Right. I've also been in scenarios where the head of sales and the CEO had developed such a personal relationship that presenting any data that conflicted with the head of sales data, you're just stuck from the beginning. Like, you're never going to convince the CEO that it's any different. And depending on the maturity of the organization, like, sales data is what you live and die by. And so the CEO had developed a real tight connection with that sales data. And it was really hard to convince or to show or to kind of mature past that. And so I think a lot of times when we ask the question of like, where does it go wrong and why did it go wrong? I think we talk about maturity in terms of like the business's maturity. There's also an element of like the business leadership's individual maturity.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Times they a changing, you know, and like getting paper leads on your desk to call, you know, Glenn Close style is no longer a thing, you know. And so this CEO needed to really sort of adopt a new way of viewing the world, and that was problematic. Okay, so let's flip the coin and go, where are the times when we see it go right? Why did that work? And what did the business gain from doing it the right way?
Yeah, so you and I have a shared connection here that one of the times that I've seen this go so right is a new director of marketing gets brought into a struggling business and looks at not an immature business either. There's sizable
market fit, like they had their
doing revenue, but profitability is hard. Marketing's not working. Gets brought in to clean things up and brings the hatchet and like immediately just says, get rid of all of our data except for the 2 or 3 things that we need to be able to see. We need to be able to see our transactions, our e-commerce conversion rate. And we need to split it up by our campaign and channel. No more. Yeah. You can't look at anything else. And what it created was alignment. It started from this deep foundation of simplicity. And then people started to mature from alignment rather than this and so you got this nice orderly garden of data consumption in an organization over time rather than this like weed fest. So that was one of the things. I don't know, maybe you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was an interesting story to kind of dive into. And we're sitting here on the other end listening going, you mean to tell me like every week you spend X amount of time manually exporting data from your analytics platform into a shared sheet so that your team can see it,
and at this maturity size,
and that fervor with which the answer was yes
and nothing else,
absolutely, and nothing else, and we all go, wow, like, and we've got people on our team that are academically being like, is this even the right, kind of questioning it, and we're on the call going, we're listening to this story going like, yeah, no, I don't think you can question like the amount of revenue that's gone up and all these other things that have come from that clarity and focus around those things. So.
Yeah, I think there's another thing too so seeking alignment's important in data democracy for sure. Because there's a tool in seeking alignment that we talk about here all the time, and it's a nod to the Crucial Conversations book. But you'll get people to say, actually, it's not even Crucial Conversations. It's I don't know, one of those other books. But it's the idea of like when you are working on interdepartment communications about this is the number that represents this effort. If somebody goes, yep. Then you go like, they agreed, but I don't know if they like just submitted or, but what you want is like that's right. Like you're telling me that this is the way that you measure your efforts. And so we can get in alignment, but let me try to describe to you, is this the number that makes sense? And I think I can explain your position. And somebody that says that's right is different than the submissive. Yep. That's right.
Sure.
Yep. Sure. And I think that seeing this go right, I think I've seen that happen where in both scenarios, but in organizations where we've been involved and we've said, let's talk about what those definitions are. And somebody goes, yep, sounds good. It's like, that wasn't buy-in.
Yeah.
What we need is buy-in. So let's dig into that a little bit better. And then you get to this point where you go, we have a single definition that represents engagement for us. And now we can align our marketing efforts around that. And all of a sudden we're moving the needle because we're rowing in the same directions.
Right. One of the last thing that struck me the most about that previous conversation was that there was no being distracted by the inaccuracies. There was an acceptance that like, we know, we're sitting there from an academic side hearing this explanation of how they were using their data going, well, there's probably some stuff that's wrong and inaccurate and they could care less. Like the sentiment was, as long as it's the same inaccuracy week to week, then it's very directionally important for us. And I think that's a huge element that goes into getting it right when you don't get so focused on the numbers being 100% representative. Now that's different when you're filing your taxes, but like when you're looking at the marketing data, if you get the sense that it's, kind of wrong, but the same amount of wrong each time, it's still worth narrowing it down. And don't spend the time that it'll take to get it 100% right. Spend the time directionally improving.
There's a threshold there, right? Like accuracy is if it's 100% inaccurate and consistently 100% inaccurate, then you've missed something. Sure. But if it's like 85 or 90% accurate and consistently that and evenly across channels or teams or devices or whatever, then that's good enough for a lot of scenarios. That's good enough to help you guide direction.
Right. Okay. And just the cherry on top of that, what did they gain? I do believe the revenue went up like 60%. That marketing director was promoted to the president of the company. Like lots of things were gained by that amount of focus and diligence on a core set of numbers. Okay. To make the most out of an analytics practice and data democracy, what skills or proficiencies would a team need to have?
So you need to have analytics architects that do the data collection and system design. You need to have data collection engineers or analytics engineers, and those people are focused either in web or in app. Data engineers often who are organizing the data, preparing it to be consumed. Visualization engineers that are building reports, and then analysts that are consuming the data and making judgments or combing through it to find areas of opportunity or areas of weakness.
So those are sort of the different disciplines. And at what point would it make sense to potentially engage outside help?
So I think an indicator is if you need those disciplines and you don't have them. That's kind of how we've built our organization, is to match those, to have those skill sets to be able to fill in the gaps when you might not have, when you need, you don't need a data architect maybe all day, every day, but you do at periods of time when you're planning the future. You definitely do. So that's a great fractional hire, and that's how we positioned ourselves.
So if a team's out there feeling like their data isn't quite living up to the potential that it should, it's probably worth reaching out.
Yeah, we'd love to help.
At AdMind, we help you develop a proper analytics practice so that you can measure the entire customer journey from awareness all the way through customer loyalty. This allows you to do more of what's working and less of what's not. So if you're ready for that kind of conversation, then schedule your free strategy call. If not, then stay connected to us on LinkedIn and YouTube until you are ready for that conversation. Your marketing efforts do so much more than just drive traffic. They drive influence, and we can help you measure it. So really, to get the most from data democracy, what you need to do is